Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors Studio mobile today. Actually mobile for the second straight day here. We were able to get the second hour on yesterday. Because of flights. Let's see. Tuesday, I woke up in Orlando. Wednesday, I woke up in State College. Today, I woke up in Michigan. That's some schedule.
That's pretty crazy. You and I were catching up yesterday morning. You were still at the house about 10 in the morning, and then not even 5 hours later, boom.
Yeah.
Left on a
obviously a lot to talk about. I had to take care of the first hour of the show yesterday the way we did because of travel. I mean, I had no choice. Part of it was basketball decided to leave earlier yesterday. Well, I mean, when that happens, I ended up, so I was able to do the second hour of the show live here, and then the first hour we had to do with Nicole Auerbach and Tony looking at the college football playoff and so forth, stuff that we've done before. So every once in a while we have to do that because of my travel schedule, because obviously you really can't do the show from the plane. But there are people who actually think you can do the show from the plane. Yeah, but that's okay. It's I don't understand why it's not on the show live. Well, I don't know. That's where that old common sense thing comes into play. Not tons of it out there. Have you noticed that? It's not really a high common sense deal in terms of the real world. So let's get to the 5 players that have entered the draft. We did hit on 4 of them yesterday. Miles Sanders became the 5th today. So in the second hour of the show, we were able to hit on the players entering the draft, because that's about the time they were declaring anyway, wasn't it, Sean? Was in the second hour.
Actually, we were able to get 3 of them on yesterday. Ryan Bates.
The only one we didn't get was Givens.
Yeah, I caught wind on it. That was like after 6 last night when that broke.
Yeah, I know. He's the only one I didn't get an inkling of in advance.
That surprised me as well.
I think at the end of the season, I had a pretty good idea about Miller, had a pretty good idea about Sanders, pretty good idea about McGovern, pretty good idea of Bates. I never once heard Givens. So that's the one where I was like, okay, all right. That was the one that of the 5 is the curveball to me, which is fine. You have to understand. Let's take it from several angles here, which I think you have to with this. Number one, let's start with the angle of the player themselves. Okay, you have to know what their personal situation is moving forward, because here is an opportunity for a Sharif Miller who doesn't come from a background of affluence, where he can get in there and he can help his family. Okay. And he's worked, and he is a hard worker. He is a team guy. He's a guy that pulled Yetur Gross-Matos aside and said, look, in order to be better, you've got to be more serious about watching tape and how you watch tape and what you're looking for. So even though Miller probably knew all season long that he wanted to go this route, he was still throwing himself into the team and throwing himself into a teammate because it was better for the teammate and it was better for the team. But he also doesn't come from a background of affluence. I think it's pretty safe to say that Kevin Givens does not come from a position of affluence with his family either. So he has shown versatility of playing. Remember, you're talking. This is a talent, hard work, and player development come into play here. He was a stand-up player at Altoona, playing stand-up defensive end, playing outside linebacker, and he gets to Penn State. Now he's got to put his hand in the dirt. And he showed flashes that he could be a very good defensive end, but then they moved him inside. he had to put weight on. He was a guy that always struggled for a while putting weight on, believe it or not. Something a lot of us can't relate to. And but he was finally able to get himself into the mid to upper 280s and maintain his quickness. He's a really good player. There's no getting around that. And him staying would have been a big plus for Penn State. There's no getting around it. Sharif Miller, all five of these guys, if they stay, really help Penn State next year. Right? Simple but accurate statement. They've already proven themselves. They've proven themselves to the coaching staff. They've proven themselves to the fans. They've proven themselves to their opponents. They're really, really good players. But again, for Miller, here's a chance to help his family. Givens, here's a chance to help his family. Now, Connor McGovern, for example, you're going to presume he probably got a high grade. And his family's fine. His father, I believe, is the superintendent up at Lake Lehman. So they're doing well. But when you get a grade that shows that you might be going, and I don't know what his grade was, but I'm guessing. I think, was it Mel Kiper had him number 1 on his guard board, something like that. So I can see him going. Yeah. Now let's get to the next part. Let's see. Ryan Bates. I think we pretty much felt even going into the preseason. Even into the preseason, I thought there was a good chance that Bates might go. He's been here 4 years. He's worked hard at multiple positions here. He actually came here as a center. He then moved to guard. And then, of course, whatever tackle. And he's done everything the program's asked him to do. We need you to play left guard. He plays left guard. We need you to play left tackle. He plays left tackle. We need you to play right tackle. He plays right tackle. And that, he probably feels that, can he improve his stock moving forward? Miles Sanders is an interesting spot where he gained over 1,200 yards. He improved as a pass catcher. And he improved as a blocker. Okay, the last two are really important moving forward for the NFL as a running back. Because obviously, he can run the ball. And all credit to his youth coach. Sanders used to be a guy that was a east-west as a kid. And his youth coach told him, he said, look, you keep doing the east-west stuff, I'm going to move you to guard. Well, he went out in the next play and he did an east-west play. And guess what he did? He moved him to guard. Sanders was like, what? I told you if you did it, you're going to move to guard. You're going to run straight ahead. You're going to run downhill. Well, Miles has become a very good downhill runner. It is also a year where everything goes in cycles. It appears that next year is a cycle that should be deep with running backs. It appears that in this particular year it's a bit thinner at running back, which opens the door to help out his mom and obviously to help out himself. And there's another part that comes into play, and I don't know if the players think about this that much. They might, because if they're getting an advisor would tell them this. If you get in now, you can play yourself into your second contract at the age of, 25. That second contract is so important. That second contract is the contract that can set you up for a long period of time. You get a third contract, man, you are sailing in the NFL. So that's where it is with the players. So you got to think about the player's personal situation. You got to think about the depth at a certain position and what is going to be best for them. You do have to think about that. Obviously, if you're a Penn State fan, you want the best for them. There's no doubt about that. But you're also very concerned about what does the big picture look like. What's different about this is that we've had players over the years at Penn State leave early. All right, but it's always been a player here and there. Mike Munchak, Todd Blackledge, Richie Anderson, Kajana Carter, LeVar Arrington. It's always been a player. Saquon Barkley. It's always been a player. You never had 5 leave at once, and that is a shock to the system. In the end, when you're recruiting high-level talent, which James Franklin and his staff have been doing, you're going to get 5 players entering the draft. It's just going to happen because that's how you've been recruiting. Now, let's go back to a quote that Jack Ham, it had to be, I want to say during the 16th season. Jack said during the game when they changed up some young players in the backfield, in the defensive backfield, he said, look, if you come to Penn State, you should expect to play right away. Penn State plays a lot of players. Well, in the end, by playing a lot of players, that does, even though you're losing some really, really good talent, it does in some way blunt that. We'll talk about that in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.
Hey, by the way, David Robertson has signed a 2-year deal with at least $23 million in guaranteed cash with the Phillies. That's a good pickup. That's a good pickup. You normally don't want a guy like Robertson's the kind of guy who's a really good relief pitcher. You don't really, when he's had chances to be in the closer's role, like he knows he's the closer, he's not comfortable. All right? But if you put him in a role where he's occasionally a closer, occasionally a setup guy, occasionally has to come in the 5th, 6th inning, he can really be good. I think he fills a lot of different roles for the Phillies moving forward. So they signed him today. And I guess Bryce Harper is visiting as well or something like that. So, all right. So now let's get to what does Penn State do from here? I mean, they've been recruiting in such a way, and again, if you noticed how the announcements were handled, did you notice the same writing, the same font, and everything like that? They made their statements, and it was all done internally, and Chris Peterson put out a release last night. Okay, so Penn State's known about this for weeks. I mean, and if you're James Franklin, you want to know about this. Any coach wants to know ahead of time what's going on with this. You want to know what is the shape of your roster. You want to know what you have to do in recruiting, what position you may have to concentrate on. How do you want to handle now the late signing period on February 6th? All right, so now you know where you need to go because Penn State's roster, I want to say, is at 80 scholarship players right now. So let's talk about Miles Sanders. That running back room has in Ricky Slade, who's a really good prospect. Journey Brown really came on and got better and better as the season went along. Now and then you go, there's a walk-on, and C.J. Holmes, who had been at Notre Dame, is actually a walk-on with the program. And they recruited Devin Ford and Noah Cain. They are said to be outstanding prospects. All right, outstanding prospects. We know about stars and things like that, but they're outstanding prospects. Okay. Now you go to the offensive line. There's no doubt Bates and McGovern are going to be missed. That's 40% of your offensive line that you've been hoping you would get back. But I'll say this. Sometimes, having somebody there an extra year does create a log jam when it comes to another talented player. And in this case, that talented player, I think, is Mike Miranda. Mike Miranda, I thought, if you notice in the Rutgers game, Miranda played a lot for McGovern at that right guard spot. McGovern missed a lot of plays in the Rutgers game. And Miranda played really well, and then he ended up starting the Maryland game where they put McGovern at center and Menick couldn't play in that game. And Miranda played really well in that game. I feel like Mike Miranda's time has come. I mean, he's going to be a redshirt sophomore next year. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining, and I think the door is open for him. Des Holmes, I think the door is starting to open for him. They'll have to make a decision now with C.J. Thorpe. I don't know if the Givens exit plays a role as to what they want to do with C.J. Thorpe. So we'll see what they want to do in the spring where C.J. Thorpe ends up. And then you've got, Rasheed Walker, for example. Walker had himself a really good bowl practice session. Walker was really good. And now obviously getting into games and getting that done is going to be a little different. I understand that. Nobody emphasizes that more than me. And but I think he's got a chance to be pretty good. And, and then you get some other guys. They have JC guy that they brought in that supposedly a lot of people were really high on. Obviously, I haven't seen him, so for me to comment on that would be wrong. But still, they've had that. And so to say, oh, I've seen him do this. I haven't seen him do anything. In the winter program, and that's when the first time I'll see him. But that's so they've got some depth there. Let's see what they want to do with a guy like Des Holmes, for example, who's been playing some guard. Now the defensive tackle spot. Mustipher played a lot this year. And I think Mustipher has a lot of upside. I think he's going to be really good. Getting Hansard back would help. Okay? Getting Ellison Jordan back would help. Rob Windsor staying helps. Windsor had a great finish to his season. And so you've got that. And now you want to see how some other young players come into play here. Thorpe obviously played there. I mentioned him. Will a guy like Judge Culpepper, for example, and Aeneas Hawkins, they then make the next step? That's something that, we're going to have to, all of us, wait to see about that. They both have really nice upsides, but having a really nice upside and then actually doing it, all right, that's something that they're going to have to prove. I thought Hansard last year had himself a really good spring. And I thought he was off to a good start, and things were going pretty well for him in this season, but you still saw some things he had to work on, and then he got hurt. Okay. Then you get to the defensive end. You got Shane Simmons. You got Shaka Tony. You got Yetur Gross-Matos. You got Daniel Joseph. Okay? And then there's a guy like Jason Oweh. I think they handled Oweh right. Some people, why didn't he play in the bowl game? Look, Oweh's only been playing football for, 3 years? A couple of years in high school, now this year. He is a tremendous athlete that is learning on the job. And I think he has a chance to be really good. And again, having a guy like Miller there would be great for next season because, again, you'd have those bookends of Miller and Yetur Gross-Matos. But at the same time, does that then stall how much you're using a Jason Oweh? And Shane Simmons, who had a fabulous preseason, then suddenly got banged up. He's got a lot to him I really like. As long as he stays healthy, which he did the second half of the season. But in the preseason, before he got banged up, he was really showing. Jack and I were at a practice one day and we're like, wow, he has really come on. And then all of a sudden a week later he's banged up and he can't play for a while. And that's just that's the crusher of all this. Okay, we're in Michigan. Donnie Collins is going to join us in the next half hour to talk about this. Then some open line time, and then Nathan Davis on Bucknell's comeback in Army last night. Penn State basketball tonight with one of the 5 undefeated teams in America, Michigan.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is The Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Key routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. And the next stop on the tour is Michigan. As I said, I woke up in Orlando Tuesday, I woke up in State College Wednesday, and I woke up in Michigan today. A life I would not trade. But at the same time, you do get all over the place doing this, and it's caused us to make an adjustment here or there as to what we're doing with the show. We had to make a 1-hour adjustment yesterday, and then I did the second hour live. That was all because of travel yesterday. Basketball decided to leave earlier, so when they leave earlier, I'm not gonna drive out here. I've done that before. I've actually driven here before, but I did that for the Big Ten Network. I had to do a wrestling match out here. Speaking of wrestling, they won the Southern Scuffle, but that which is expected. They're great. But see, wrestling doesn't have to deal with what we're talking about here. If you're a professional sport. If you're a sport with a professional component, you have to deal with this. Baseball players leaving to go into the baseball draft early. Look at the number of players that have left now Penn State hockey to go now into the AHL or to an NHL team. I'm sure John Beilein would love to have Glenn Robinson III here tonight. Can't. He's in the NBA. He left early. Patrick Chambers would love to have Tony Carr here tonight. Nope, left early for the NBA draft. Well, now that's the way it is in today's sports with professional sports looming. And then there's football. The difference is that Penn State has never had 5 players declare early for the draft. That then becomes, for the fan base, which I completely understand, concerning. But it also tells you the level they've been recruiting at, and it also tells you about the job they've done with player development. And you will get a great reputation when it comes to both as you continue recruiting and bringing more talent in. All right, with that, let's bring in Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune. Donnie, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Doing well. Look, it's the modern era of what college football is. We've seen this all the time at other places. Penn State fans aren't used to mass names being entered into the NFL draft. What were your thoughts on the 5 names that went in?
Yeah, I think if you went and surveyed all the beat guys and everybody who's been around, probably you might feel this way yourself. I was not surprised at 4 names and was surprised at a 5th name. I wasn't sure on Givens, but the other 4 I was pretty convinced would go. But I think if you went and asked other people, they'd tell you they thought Givens would go too, or they didn't think McGovern would go, and whatever. I don't know what to make of it yet, because really, over the past couple of years, you've had some junior players who really could have entered the draft and didn't. Marcus Allen didn't after 17, and Amani didn't after 17, or after 16 with Allen, and Amani didn't after 17. I don't know where to really take this other than you take it with what every individual player's circumstances were. I think McGovern was given a good rating by Mel Kiper had him as number 1 guard at one point. So, you can't be higher ranked than that. So I'm tending to look at it like that. Others, I know. It's just going to be. Is this the beginning of just a different era for Penn State football? Maybe for big time college football with the draft. But I know this. James Franklin has told these kids, you can get them in, get them a degree in 3.5 years, and some of these guys get their degree in 3.5 years. And a lot of them are getting in early anymore. So it could be that's their goal. And the other thing, Noah Cain, when he signed his letter of intent or announced his decision on signing day last month, kind of said, this is my home for the next 3 years. So I think a lot of them come in with this idea that 3 seasons and done.
Yeah, I think they do too. Look, Every single player, and I know it's a general statement, every single player that signs a letter of intent at a Power 5 school thinks this is the next step to the NFL anyway. I think that's a fair general statement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially I mean, here's something I don't know if people talk about this a lot, but it seems to me there's a lot more 4- and 5-star recruits than there used to be. I mean, there used to be a lot of 3-star recruits that would go places, and I don't put any stock into this, but I do in this sense, because if you're a 4-star recruit and you're signing a letter of intent to go to a big time school, then yeah, you think you're going 3 years and you're going to the NFL. So I think a lot of these guys have some, not these 5 guys in particular necessarily, but I think a lot of guys who enter drafts, do so with, kind of more hope than reality. I really do believe that.
Well, there's another part of it too. I think you put it the right way. Their individual circumstances. You feel like Miles Sanders looks at his mom and says, "Here's my chance to help." I think Sharif Miller, looks at his family and says, "Here's my chance to help." Kevin Givens is probably in the same boat. A guy like McGovern is not. I mean, I think that you're right. I think it's all on rating, and McGovern's family is superintendent of schools there, for goodness sakes. So, I think part of it, some enter into it is what you said. Individual circumstances do mean something as a decision.
Yeah, and it's very difficult when you talk to Sharif Miller for a long time and you hear his backstory and you get to know him a little bit. It's very difficult to tell Sharif Miller, hey, your draft stock might go up another round or two next year. Well, he needs the money now. He's close to his degree anyway. That's what you go to college for. You can get that, and then while he's pursuing that, he can pursue the NFL. Maybe somebody will take a chance on him. Maybe he'll get a pretty good signing bonus. A pretty good signing bonus for Sharif Miller is a lot of money. It's life-changing money, and I'm sure the same exists for Givens, and sure the same exists for Sanders, other guys, and that's why they do it. And it's just very difficult until you understand individually what each of these guys go through on a daily basis outside of football to judge what their decision should be. Because really, if you're a fan, you're a reporter, you're looking at it from a football perspective.
Sure.
Strictly. And I think strictly from a football perspective, all of these guys should have come back. I don't think they could hurt themselves coming back. And especially a guy like Sanders, I think he could, if he comes back next year and protects the football, I think he's primed for a big year, and he could be a first or second round pick. But he's not going to be that now. But at the same token, he can get hurt. So this is the chance. This is the time to go out there and go out and get your money. And if you really believe that now you need it right now, then I can't as a human being tell you not to do it.
Well, let's look at Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa could have played the last month of the season. Mm-hmm. He could have. Right? Nick Bosa left school. That was in the middle of the season, left his team because he knows he's going to be a top 5 pick, and he didn't want to risk it anymore. That's where we've come to in all this. I think the Jalen Smith injury in the Fiesta Bowl when Notre Dame played Ohio State, I think has had an incredible influence on players sitting out of bowl games, but also how players view college football to get to the NFL. Because I think his injuries had an impact that's a domino that I don't think can be reversed.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And that was the start. I remember we were in Jacksonville when that happened.
Yes.
I remember thinking to myself that people are going to take notice of this, and whether they would or not, I didn't know. But I thought privately, guys are going to be concerned about playing in this game. And then I think it was the very next year you had McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, who just didn't play. So that was it. then the floodgates are opening for good reason. So yeah, the smart money. If you're Miles Sanders and you're thinking I could be a 4th round pick this year, or I could be a 2nd round pick next year, but I gotta risk week to week injury, practice to practice injury, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to not play in the bowl game anyway. I think it makes some sense to kind of weigh your options and weigh the risk reward, whether those couple of extra $100,000 or tens of thousands of dollars or whatever the difference is that he's going to lose is worth it. But yeah, I think college football has some questions to answer there, and a lot of guys played the bowl games this year, and I think they took big risks. I mean, Kentucky Benny Snell took a big risk playing. Josh Allen took a big risk. Well, what if Josh Allen's going to be the first, second, third pick in the draft? So what if he gets hurt? Well, he cost himself millions, and it worked out for him. It worked out for Saquon, but it didn't work out for Smith. So you got to. It's a total gamble. Do you want to take the gamble? And I think every player asks themselves that, and I do not blame anybody who says no.
To me, this tells everybody a lot about the talent that James Franklin's brought into the program, that you have players that are good enough to be considered as early entries into the draft. Now it's a question of replacing them. He and his staff obviously knew all about this before they even went to Orlando. I mean, you could tell by the prepared statements that were put out by the players yesterday, all in the same format, same font, everything like that. I mean, that came out of the football office, okay? And Chris Peterson put out the release yesterday and so forth. So they knew all about this, which means now you get to the part about placing them and taking the next step for the next year and the year after. How do you look at potential replacements? Because James does play a lot of people.
Yeah, he needs depth now. I think they're okay, especially at running back.
Yes.
With Kane and Ford coming in, that's great. I mean, you get. I mean, everybody's talking about those two guys because they're in the recruiting class. But Journey Brown looks pretty good to me too, and then obviously Ricky Slade. He was my MVP pick in the Citrus Bowl. It didn't work out, but that's what I think Ricky Slade. That's the kind of player I think he could be. So they got four, top of the line young running backs. So I think Sanders they lost, but I think they'll be able to replace them. I mean, getting to your point about they knew this was happening. They've known for a while this was happening.
Sure.
McGovern's obviously from this area. I had heard a lot of chatter that he was going to go, and this is dating back to November, December, early December. But they recruited a junior college offensive lineman. That happened.
Right, and then there's Mike Miranda, who's played a lot down the stretch, including replacing McGovern for several series in the Rutgers game. And I thought Miranda, I mean, there's certain times, Donnie, where you feel like it's, quote, the other guy's time to ascend anyway, and I think this is Miranda's time anyway.
Yeah, it's Miranda's time, and C.J. Thorpe, I thought he played okay at defensive tackle in the Citrus Bowl, but he's an offensive lineman. James makes no. He pulls no punches on that one. I think they could move him back, and Wiegand's a really good recruit who could step in because he was a junior college kid. He was a really good one. So I think they have a question at one of the tackle spots, but I think they'll be very, 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 very capable of replacing what they lost on the offensive line. Defensive line, I think that's they knew how good they had gotten up front, and now it's just a matter of replacing them. But it's still on both sides of the line. You have the young player who really develops coming back. Yetur is going to come back at least, probably for next year.
Yeah,
he's got to come back for next year, but probably his last year. But I thought at the on the offensive line, I thought the best lineman on the team at the end of the year anyway was Mennett. So I think they have a good core, good nucleus of guys coming back. It's just a matter of, the communication piece of it up front is so important, and they're going to need to develop that in the spring throughout the summer.
I mean, Mustipher played a lot. Windsor's scheduled to come back. Shane Simmons, Jason Oweh now is going to get a full-time shot out there. I mean, they've got young players waiting in the wings at the key spots where they just lost players. They have young players waiting, and it's going to be interesting. Like take the Walker kid, for example, at tackle. I mean, he's obviously a player that they have confidence in. They were able to get him into a few games. Yeah,
and Trace actually mentioned him after the game. He mentioned two young guys. He mentioned Walker, and he mentioned Justin Shorter as having really, really strong camps in bowl practice. So So I think it's that's the thing with this team. If they didn't start losing guys to the pros, people would wonder if Franklin was developing them. So now you got younger guys coming in. You're just not. It's not going to be like the old days when these linemen felt Marco Rivera and Jeff Harding felt like they were around forever. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a blink of an eye and they're gone. But hey, that's the way the game's got to be played, and the way the coaching staff is right now, the way they recruit, I think that it kind of benefits them because now they can really guarantee a top flight kid, hey, you're going to play really, really soon. And
exactly.
I think that's so important.
Right, and exactly, and it gets into player development. Look, who's the first player to leave early with a year of eligibility remaining from Penn State? In 1981, it was Mike Munchak from your area. Okay,
mm-hmm.
The rule back then was you had to get your degree first. Well, Mike did, right? And after 81, it's like, oh no, well, he had Farrell and Munchak. How are they going to be in 82? Okay, now I know you had to just replace one player, not five. Then the next year, Blackledge left early. Blackledge had another year to go. Now, obviously, 83 was a struggle for Doug Strang and those guys at quarterback, but this has gone on for 35 years. It just hasn't happened where five guys did it at once. That's the difference. I mean, Donnie, it's the new millennium. It's new. It is now.
Yeah, and it's the NFL is the dream for these kids, and that's the plan. And the other thing is they can talk to agents now. So you hear people telling them, hey, look, you can you do it for 3 years, stay for 4, whatever. But consider after your junior year, and so they're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different places, and it's just a new world. We just got to adjust to it. But there are some benefits to it. Like I said, I mean, you can do you get Noah Cain if Miles Sanders isn't going to leave?
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. If you have a program where you're not worth a darn, you don't have guys leaving early.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, simple as that. Ohio State has tons of guys leaving early, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Michigan. I'm here in Michigan right now. They got guys leaving. I mean, Higdon's leaving early, didn't play in the bowl game. And so forth. Same story. If you have talent will grow, nurture, and then leave.
Yeah.
That's the way it is today. It's just that's the way the rules are, and that's the nature of the money and how to get that all-important second contract maybe a year earlier in life.
Yeah, and it's that way. We're focused on football. It's that way in every sport.
Sure it is.
Every sport. They're trying to the analysts, the scouts, the general managers in baseball, basketball. They're guys. They want that guy who's a year younger that they could they could work and develop. And hey, a lot of these guys that are doing that know this. I mean, they're not just doing it thinking. They're not doing it with just hopes and dreams. They're doing it strategically. So, will all these guys get drafted? I don't know, but so I think they'll all end up in camps. They'll all end up making money, and they'll all be able to take their run at it.
Hey, Penn State's playing basketball tonight without Tony Carr.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it happens in every sport. I mean, Glenn Robinson III. He'd be a senior right now here at Michigan.
Yeah.
He's playing in the NBA. I mean, it's just the way of the world now. I just don't think Penn State fans are used to it yet.
No, but they're going to. There's a lot of things over the last couple of years that Penn State fans haven't been used to that they've gotten used to, and I think this is just the next step in line with that. And the game's going to constantly evolve, and every game does. It's just this is a place that with a lot of tradition and fans love it. So I get that part of it, but. Yeah, and again, like I said, next year, hey, maybe 5 guys decide to stay. I think it's totally individual, every year by year thing. But my gut feeling is that it's not going to be that way, and that you're going to have a slew of guys every year who decide to forego that final year.
Donnie, always a pleasure. Appreciate your time very much.
All right, Steve. Thanks so much.
Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune. We have a lot more to talk about this in the next half hour. Look, do I want it like the old days
where everybody stayed 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I think I love that. You could count on it all the time, but this is not the way it is right now. So you have to adapt. Second hour coming up here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.